the dogs. We are going to be going through all of the books that I read last month. I think we're gonna go in order of how I read them. Then we're gonna talk about the rating, my opinions, da 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 da. So if you're interested in seeing what I read, please keep on watching. The first one, oh, we don't have it. I don't have the first two, a copy of the first two. But the first one I read was Reckless by Elsie Silver. The story, this one centers Winter and Beau in the Chestnut Springs series, I believe series it's called. Apparently I gave that one a 5-star. To be fair, I think I gave all of the books in that series a 5-star. That is probably my favorite series. Well, it's the only romance series I think I've ever read, but I think it's my favorite series I've read this year so far. I don't read a lot of series usually. I'm a standalone book girly, or maybe like a duology at most. So yeah, that was really good for me. I loved it. It was the last book that I had left to read in there, even though I don't think it's the last book in the series, but you can read it. You can read them interchangeably. It doesn't really matter. This is from the Indigo website. It says Theo Silva. Why did I write Beau? His name is Theo. That's so random. It's Theo, and who the fridge is Beau? Theo Silva, rowdy bull rider, notorious ladies' man. Winter Hamilton knows exactly what it means when he eyes her like that. But she's almost free of her toxic marriage and has sworn off men entirely, so all she sees when she looks back at Theo is temptation served up with a heaping side of heartbreak. The man is hard to trust, but it turns out even harder to resist. Make that impossible. Because Theo is persistent, and no matter how hard Winter tries to freeze him out, he melts her icy exterior and pulls apart all her defenses. Over a drink in a small town bar, she finds herself blurting out her deepest, darkest secrets. Then, she spends the singular hottest night of her life with the man she'd never thought she'd say yes to. He worshipped... Oh, they do say it. There's an accidental pregnancy in this as well. He worships, which I don't think I've ever read in a book before, but it was fantastic. He worships her body, he makes her blush, she comes alive beneath his hands. Then she tells him to forget it ever happened. She wants simple, and with him, it all feels complicating. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, a secret. But that little plus sign is going to make the secret impossible to keep. So yeah, there's an accidental pregnancy in this as well. She gets pregnant after their one-night stand. And then things unravel from the beginning, from when she tries to tell him that she's pregnant. So it was very interesting. It's very captivating. It's a typical Elsie Silver Chestnut Springs book. You don't know what that's like, but I give it 5 stars. This is all based off vibes. The next book I read, I also don't have, unfortunately. I borrowed it from the library as well, is The Bodyguard by Katherine, and this book I gave 3.5 stars. The Bodyguard is basically about a bodyguard, who the bodyguard happens to be the girl in the fake relationship, and she has to fake being his girlfriend so she can be close enough physically to him to keep guarding him, as she's part of like a whole team of bodyguards. It's not like she's a solo dolo person out here guarding a random dude. And then we kind of see how their love story develops. It's a rom-com, so obviously it's good, but I think it was pretty humorous from what I remember. There's a couple of plot twists in there that you don't see coming, and I'm just like, oh, okay. So it was okay. I wouldn't read it again. I've only read one other Katherine Center book called The Rom-Commers, and I read that in the summertime, and I loved that book. That book I had to purchase my own and like highlight, and it was so good. But this one was 3.5. It's an older book from her, so I wasn't expecting it to be like amazing writing like she has now. Okay, the next one I read was let me say the name of the book first. Next one I read was Bunny by Mona Awad. I gave this 5 stars, by the way. If you couldn't tell from how I was stuttering, 5 stars. This book is so stinking weird. Okay, half of the time I felt like I was in a fever dream, and then half of the time I was like, is everything a metaphor for something else? And then the other half of the time, that's 3 halves, that's not a whole. And then the other third of the time I was like, yo, is this person okay? The person who wrote this book, I was like, how did you even like think about this random stuff? And to this day, I still randomly think about this book whenever I'm just like doing something else. This book is so weird. It got me interested in reading weird books, which is how I explain another one of the books that I've read. But this is so weird. It's this it takes place in a college. This girl is in her grad program. I think it's like a creative writing program, and her program is really small. I think there's like 5 of them in the program, and they're all females, and she's kind of like the outcast of the group. But the other 4 girls, they're super close. They are all up in each other's business all the time. They're like typical, like what you would see Mean Girls type best friends, but they're not mean to her. They just kind of ostracize her all the time, and they call each other Bunny, hence the term Bunny. And then one day, yes, one day she randomly receives an invitation to hang out with them at their house, and it kind of goes from there. So I've read online somewhere that people think that it's kind of like a cult type of retelling. Some people think that she's on drugs. Some people think that it's demonic. Some people, it's some weird stuff going on in this book, okay? There's like, I'm trying not to spoil anything, but there's like zombies, but also like, I promise you, like hallucinations. And there's like, you don't know what's up from down in this book, and I was so confused halfway through it. Like, I didn't even, it was so weird. It was so weird. Read it. 5 stars. 5 stars, okay? So Bunny was the 3rd book that we read this month. Next I read The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. Okay, so this is a reread for me. I read this, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago. 3 years. When did this come out? 21 or 22? Whenever it just came out. Oh, 2020. Damn. I know it was, I guess I read this 4 years ago. So I read this 4 years ago. Basically, they're in a civilization. Everywhere is kind of broken into their own kind of, not parishes, not provinces, not factions, but like their own different towns. They're like north, south, west, east, right? And every year on their 15th birthday, the girls get cut to see what color their blood is gonna run. Is it gonna be red like a human, and that way they're accepted into the village and they get their husband and, you know, move on with life? Or is it gonna run gold? At which point the villagers and everybody assume that there's some kind of monster, some kind of witch, very whatever those things were where they used to try and, very Salem, right? And this girl particularly, her blood runs gold. And turns out, thankfully, at that time when they're doing her ceremony and stuff, everybody whose blood runs gold gets kind of indoctrinated. This one, right? Yes, everybody gets indoctrinated into like an army to fight for and protect the kingdom, right? So her blood runs cold. She gets swooped up into the kingdom, and it's kind of like a training montage, kind of like she's learning how to fight, how to use her abilities, kind of like she's discovering the secrets of the kingdom as well. It's just very, very good. She's learning about like other people who are like her, about the monsters that they're fighting, that they're trying to protect. Oh, that's another thing, is the kingdom is constantly under attack by these things. What do they call them? I don't know what they're called, but I just imagine like a really ugly dragon that is always attacking them, always killing their people, blah 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 blah. So the army is being built so that they can like protect the kingdom, and also like specifically go out and try to, you know, kill them. So yeah, this one was really good. The next one I read, I tandem read this. This is when I just got my e-reader, so I read the ebook and I have the physical copy. This is called None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. Sorry, my eyes just got big because I just remember what the book was about. This is a thriller, I guess you would call it. Thriller, mystery, whatever. Not really thriller, it's more of just a mystery novel, right? It's nothing like but so basically there is this lady, right? She is celebrating her birthday at a pub, and the same time she's celebrating her birthday, somebody else is also celebrating their birthday at the same pub. But from the way they celebrate, how many times can you say celebrate, you can tell that they live two completely different lives, right? One of them is life of the party, has a lot of friends, you know, popping champagne bottles, she has luxury on her side. And the other one is more self-conscious. She is more, how do you say it, she's more reserved in person, and I guess she's just more reserved, right? Her life is more meek and timid, more like normal, if you will. It's Josie and Alex, right? Josie is the quiet one, Alex is the loud, outgoing one. When Alex goes into the washroom, Josie follows her in there, and you know, they try to they just kindle something like, oh, we're birthday twins, that's crazy, you know, what a coinkydink, da 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 da. And then they kind of form a friendship after a while, but not really a friendship, more like a business contract, because it's a podcast and Josie is kind of gonna be the new subject of her podcast, if you will. And she's basically trying to tell her life story over a series of episodes, right? And it's while she's doing the podcast, while things are happening that don't necessarily match what Josie is saying, that Alex realizes that this girl is weird. And not only is she weird, she is dangerous. She's a danger to Alex and her two young kids and her husband and everything that she's worked hard for. So we're kind of going through that. We're seeing how she's discovering this. We're seeing the discrepancies in the story. We're seeing how what Josie says, Josie doesn't always mean, and what Josie says hardly ever matches reality. I rated this 3.75. The next book, so this is book number 6. This is book number 6. We read my second fantasy of the month, which is also getting a second book in January, I think, of next year. This is Blood Scion by Deborah Falaye. First of all, look, if it's one thing these YA fantasies are gonna do, is they're gonna go off on the cover. She's a scion, and in the society that they live in, whenever you turn, I think 15 or 16, you may or may not get a letter to go serve in the king's army. And the king's army, the purpose is to kill scions, or people who house scions and protect them, right? So she gets her letter, she makes her way into the army, trying to hide her abilities, but it's physically painful to not scion up. You know what I mean? To not super scion is crazy. It's hard. Literally, it leaves physical bruises on your body. But she's a superhuman. She's a super person, right? So the goal in this book is for her to learn how to use her power, number 1, and to learn about the death of her mother. The reason she willingly went there, because if you run away from when you get called into the army, you also die, right? But one of the reasons she was okay with going is because she wants to find out what happens to her mother. Everybody in her village thinks that her mother ran away with her uncle and they had an affair, and so they stopped buying, like, not cassava, some kind of other root vegetable from her and her grandfather. They're like struggling, right? Because they're being ostracized by the community. So the part of the reason she wants to go is because the training happens in the capital, and she wants to, they have like a record of everything that happens there. Her goal is to go and find out what happened to her mother. And when she finds out what happens to her mother, it goes crazy. The training for her to figure out how to stay alive in the city, crazy. Her figuring out how to use her powers and wield them, crazy. The love interest, crazy. Crazy. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say nothing else about that man, but crazy. Okay, this is a good book. I rated this 5. I did. I rated this a 5-star as well. Girl, I got a lot of 5 stars in here. Anyways, the second last book we read this month is Big Swiss by Beagin. I hope you can see that. Let me turn up the brightness. No, let me turn down the brightness. There you go. Big Swiss by Beagin. This book was like, I read because I read Bunny, right? To me, Bunny was an intro into the weird fiction world, right? It is a dark academia novel or whatever, but it's also an intro into weird fiction, right? I read Big Swiss because it's supposed to be about this woman who transcribes therapy sessions and she becomes slightly enthralled. I don't want to say obsessed because she doesn't do anything obsessive and she doesn't go out of her way to meet her, but she becomes really enthralled with this one patient who she nicknames Big Swiss because she's Swiss. And you know, they happenstance meet in a dog park one day and they kind of start a relationship together, and it's supposed to go ahead and follow that, right? We're also following Big Swiss's trauma, we're following the main character's trauma, we're following like all of the different ways her life is panning out. Mind you, I think she's like 37 or something like that. She's not that old, but you know, sometimes in these books they make you feel like 37 is the end of the world, and it's really not. And you know, we're making our way through learning about these characters and all that fun stuff, and it's funny. I'll give you that much. I rated it a 2.5 just because it was funny to me. It was super hilarious. There's a lot of quotable things in there, a lot of things where I was like, oh, that feels very much human coded, you know. It doesn't feel like I'm reading a fictional book. It feels very much like life, but at the same time it gave me Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine vibes, where it's just like, I don't see the plot of this book. Like, there's no purpose to this book, there's no crescendo, there's no climax, there's no, it's like we were dropped in the middle of a story, in the middle of someone's life, and then we ended off still in the middle of someone's life. It was like, okay, so what was the point of seeing all of this? Like, it doesn't really, I guess to some people it might, you know, help you with like life lessons and how to appreciate things in life, but for me it was kind of like, why did I read this? It had no purpose, it had no plot. I don't like literary fiction. I didn't know it was literary fiction. I thought it was gonna be like something comedy. I mean, it is funny, but I thought it was gonna be like, have like a point, like a purpose. It felt very purposeless to me, and so it got a 2.5, and the extra parts is just because it was funny. It was super hilarious to me. I probably will never read it again. If I buy the book, it would probably just be to highlight the funny parts. I think I highlighted a lot of funny parts in there actually. But yeah, that wasn't really it for me. I think that was my lowest rated book this month. It was. And then right above that was The Bodyguard. I had a lot of 5 stars actually. Anyways, my final book for this month, I just finished it this morning, is In 5 Years by Rebecca Serle. I was crying in this book. Okay, I rated it a 4.25, and I'm happy I'm doing this review today on the day that I finished it, because I feel like I can say confidently the emotions that arose. So it's about this woman. She falls asleep in her apartment on the day that she got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years, right? They get engaged, she takes a nap falls asleep for an hour, and for an hour she finds herself 5 years into the future. And what she finds out 5 years into the future, it terrifies the hell out of her, to the point where she's like, I'm gonna go to therapy and see what this means and what I can do to prevent it from happening, because what she saw, she does not want to happen, right? Goes to the therapy session one time. Fast forward 4.5 years later, it still hasn't happened. It doesn't seem like it's gonna happen, right? It doesn't seem like that she saw is gonna be a thing, right? And so now, you know, she is on the path to fulfilling her 100% career goals. She is, you know, her life feels like it's getting in order now, and something tragic happens. Does it say? Yeah, something tragic happens, or something happens, and she comes face to face with the scenario, or a part of the scenario that she dreamed up 4.5 years prior. And she's trying as her might before the actual 5-year date, which is I think 5 months from when she encounters a part of her dream. She's trying as her might for it not to happen. She's going out of her way to not have this dream come true, right? Because everything in her life now will not correlate to how that dream went. And, you know, in the middle part, I was like, I don't understand how the beginning of this book is gonna relate to the plot that is happening. Like, it's not a romance, by the way. It's definitely literary fiction, but it was kind of like, also kind of like a mystery, because you're like, how is her life now going to end up as what we saw as the premonition for 5 years later? And when Y becomes Z and X gets factored in, and you see what's happening, you're gonna cry. At least I cried, but I'm also gonna start my cycle in a few days, so maybe that's why I cried. But still, it was heartbreaking in the best way possible. It was funny. It was a commentary on how we strive for so much in work that we leave a lot of other things behind and to the wayside, especially your romantic relationships. It was truthfully, it was an eye-opener. It's very, very good. It's a Good Morning America book club book, and I would suggest everybody read this. This is beautiful, and look at the cover. It's so pretty. This is like a rose gold foil as well. I would show you the back, but you know, I borrowed it from the library. You'll be able to see where my library is. So anyways, those are the 8 books that I read this month. But thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.